Welcome to Therapeutic. We're going to talk about Inside Out, getting to know your inner cast of characters, so don't go anywhere. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Josh.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. I am working the iPad today because Xander is out today. You were out last week, and Xander's out this week, but you know me, I don't want to go 2 weeks in a row and not do this. So I'm like, I'll work the iPad.
Yeah.
So people listening, this might be a little choppy at times because if there's one thing you know about me is what?
Struggling
with multitasking, right? I cannot do it. Like, I cannot sit in front of a TV like my wife can and fold clothes.
Oh, yeah,
And I will hold on to the same piece of clothes the whole episode. I'll be like,
oh my gosh.
and I'm like, I haven't folded one. I just can't do it.
I find it so interesting that people who have distractibility can't do multitasks.
Right.
You know, it just seems like kind of paradoxical or something, right?
Yeah, I know.
You always have a million things going, but you can't fold and watch television.
I can't.
You know, I mean, I know. It just seems so weird.
You know how my office is set up, right? And where I have my desk and my computer, then I have like, my office is a little bigger, and I have the therapy space, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes like a client will like want me to schedule them or print something out or something, so I have to move over into that space and I have to go on my computer, search things up, and then but there's awkward silence, right? So they'll start talking to me and my hands just stop. And I'm like, and I'll be like, I'm so sorry, like I really can't multitask, like and then I have to like take a minute to like, okay, what was I typing in? And as I get older and probably busier, I imagine has to do some, So anyways, sure. It's
I can't either.
Yeah. So. Well, no one does. People who talk about multitasking, right. Nobody does it well.
Yeah, I mean, the research is it lowers the quality of your performance.
Right. So what the other thing that you're doing is not getting it done as well.
So you fold those clothes, but they may not be folded as well.
Or my wife takes longer to do it. Like, she's better at it than me. She can definitely fold while she's watching. But I notice, like, it takes her much longer to get through.
You know also why, right?
Why?
As I revealed to you, I like folding laundry.
Oh, yeah, right. I
get to watch what I want to watch on the television.
Very EMDR-like, right? Like using
but it's a sneak away. No one's going to bug me. Yeah, one, if they come in there, they got to fold laundry.
I was getting all therapist on. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Nobody will bother you.
No.
You want to fold some laundry?
Grab part of the pile.
Yeah, sure. You can come in here and watch it. I'll even let you watch your show, but you got to fold laundry. Like, never mind.
Never mind. Seriously.
Okay, so we are going to talk about the movie Inside Out, which, I love this movie.
Yeah.
Like, do you?
Oh, yeah.
Do you recommend it a lot to clients?
Yeah, sure. But you know what's funny is I don't have to because most people have seen it.
We're going to talk about that movie. I recommend it a lot to people because they really did a good job with the metaphor of how the brain works, and there's so many nuances to it that we're not going to be able to talk about.
Right.
Every aspect of that. So,
right.
But I do have, before I get into the housekeeping stuff and everything, I do have some fun facts for you about the movie. And I think the audience will find this interesting too. The first thing, as I was kind of looking, some of these things I knew, I just wanted to get the facts straight. But then I learned some things as I was researching it. But one thing that's really interesting is like there's really no villain in this series, which is kind of not
unusual.
Yeah,
right, because the formula is a bad guy and a good guy.
Right, good and evil.
Yeah.
Especially you go back to the Pixar, like even Toy Story had a bad guy, right? The Incredibles, obviously, and a number of other. I like almost every Pixar movie that's ever been made, but this one doesn't. And so it's really kind of a war. We always talk about the tug of war within self, right? So it's the protagonist is the antagonist at the same time in a way, right?
Right, which is much more applicable to everybody's battle,
exactly,
right?
Which makes it relatable.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. Now some sources report, but this hasn't necessarily been confirmed in a statement, but there was originally like 27 different emotions that they were trying to narrow it down from, and of course they settled on the 5, right? They actually narrowed it down to 6 because one of the other fun facts is that it's grounded in psychology through the research of Paul Ekman, who's like a leading researcher at University of California in human emotion, like facial recognition, and he like found like in no matter what culture you're in, what part of the world you live in, your face responds the same to the same emotions. Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So they use his research and he identified these 6 primary emotions. So we know from the movie we have joy, anger, fear, sadness, and disgust, right? Do you know what do you want to
Jealousy?
guess?
Jealousy?
Nope.
No, because that's in the second one, right? No, what?
No,
Right.
surprise.
Oh, yeah.
And they said that surprise was it was correlated too much with fear to be able to kind of make it its own thing, to make it look right on film and to carry the story along and everything, so they went ahead and decided to not have the surprise.
Yeah, okay, I get that.
But as we know, in the second movie, they added
Yeah.
anxiety,
Yes.
envy. Do you remember the other two? Boredom.
Oh, yes.
I think they called it something else, but it's basically boredom and embarrassment. But as people can see on their screens, there's the different characters are kind of playing through right now. So, okay, so that was the different characters. Okay, something that's interesting also about the characters is that each of the main characters, the 5 that I just mentioned, they're all based on a shape. So like joy is a starburst or a star, sadness is a teardrop. Anger is a brick of fire. Fear is raw nerve. I don't know how that's a shape, but
I don't either.
I guess raw nerves are shaped like spaghetti.
Guess they
I
have
don't
a
know.
shape,
He's kind of
but
spaghetti-like.
He is, but the fray.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Disgust is broccoli. Broccoli shaped.
She is
These aren't shapes. These aren't things I typically think of as
Well,
shapes.
I was thinking squares.
Right. Well, I get like
triangle,
brick,
yeah,
teardrop, and
yeah,
star.
yeah.
But then I'm like,
Yeah, now we're stretching a little bit. Now we're thinking we're thinking objects, not just shapes. Right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last one here. Let's see. I kind of went out of order. The director Peter Docter. I think that's the funniest
That
name.
is a funny name.
Peter Docter. What if he was a doctor?
Dr. Peter Docter.
What is Doctor?
Yeah, he's Dr. Doctor. Remember
Doctor
that
Doctor.
that movie?
It sounds like a Dumb and Dumber sketch.
Well, no, it's from. Remember what is the movie with Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, where they're spies like us.
Oh,
Doctor.
did they do
Doctor,
that?
when they're
Okay.
impersonating.
I'm sure
doctors,
that's
yeah.
probably why it's in
That's
my
probably
head.
why it's
Yeah.
in your head. Yeah.
Doctor. Yeah. So Peter Docter, who directed this movie, I think I read somewhere he co-wrote it. I don't know how true that is, but the idea came around 2009 when he started on it. But what I really found the most interesting is it was because he was watching his daughter. His daughter's personality started to change as she grew. And it's just interesting to me that it's his daughter. I don't know if he has a son, maybe he does, but I have 2 boys and they're both older. And as my daughter has become an adolescent, you and I have talked about this. It is such a different experience. Like it's so much more pronounced. The changes just personality. I'm not even talking about physical changes. Just personality wise, what's happening to her versus what happened to them. So different and so much, or it's just so much more pronounced and obvious.
Right. Right.
So I thought that was a fun fact.
That is a fun fact. Yeah. Relatable.
How old's your daughter now?
9.
9. Okay. So if it's not happening, it's
Not yet.
it's getting
but
ready to.
She keeps saying it when she's sassy to me. This is her line. Mom, I'm getting close to being a sassy teenager. Like it's an excuse
That's
for
funny.
her popping off.
Yeah. Let me just kind of cover with everybody just kind of do some housekeeping things real quickly as normal. We just ask everybody that if you have not subscribed to our channel already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're not watching it on YouTube, please head over there and subscribe to our channel and ring that bell so you can be notified when more of our videos are posted. please check out the show notes because we're going to talk about some things specific to why we chose this particular topic that's therapy related, and so we will definitely be adding some links in there for you to that you can follow and have some resources available to you. So before we dive right into the episode breakdown, so we're going to start out by talking about, as I just mentioned, like the therapy element, which is a type of therapy called IFS therapy. And we're going to talk about that and something that we refer to as parts language. Then we're going to talk about what it means to get to know your parts, and then move right into who's in the driver's seat. And if you've ever watched the movie Inside Out, you know exactly what I'm talking about there. And then we're just going to talk about some practical uses, how to utilize it in your everyday life. And there's obviously some therapy options. So let's start with the first one. Let's talk about IFS therapy.
Okay. We say IFS too very quickly, right? But
yeah,
it stands for, you mentioned, internal family systems,
right? So let's just kind of tell people what it is. I'm going to give you guys the nuts and bolts real quickly. Is that basically, as Carrie was talking about, it's like there's a network of parts, right? But Richard Schwartz has kind of identified these three main categories,
categories,
right, of parts. And so you have the managers. Well, let's start with like the exiles, because the exiles are like your most vulnerable parts, right? And then the other two parts are working to basically protect the exile. So you have to think of it like these parts care very much about the most vulnerable part of you.
Well, that's the therapeutic element to this model, is what you just said. It's not the idea that we have these different competing parts. Like that's been around in art for forever. Think about the devil and the angel on your shoulder, right? And clients bring this up before you've ever introduced the model. There's something very, I think, actually organic about this idea, right?
Yeah.
What's therapeutic about what Richard Schwartz has done is the idea that what are these parts, and exploring what are their functions, right? So the exile, like you mentioned, is the most vulnerable. It's the wounded parts, the parts that we think are too dark or rejecting to be exposed to the world, right?
100%, right. And before we get into the other two parts or categories, it's important to also realize that you might find yourself being very frustrated and sometimes cruel and even hateful toward certain parts of you.
Yes.
Because even though these parts are, they care about you very much, they often are, they're not functioning quite in the most effective way to move you forward in life. So they're getting in the way. And so you might have heard the expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like, it's like your parts have very good intentions, but that they're kind of, doing what they think is right instead of you leading. So, okay, so the other two are, as you mentioned, the managers. So that's kind of the next level up. And then, so the managers are basically, kind of standing guard over
running the system,
right? Making sure that everything's, operating properly, and the exile is properly protected.
Yes, or at least not activated. Yeah,
exactly. So I have this really, the picture I'm going to show here. I'll describe it to people that aren't watching this or listening to this. Is do you remember in the movie Inside Out where they had the control panel? I love this idea.
I know.
Right, because this is manager material, right? This is how we manage the body, the whole self, right? The whole person. And so I always talk about, even before this movie came out, I would talk about, like, I always had this vision in my mind that there's these parts that are working these controls, and it's like, and when we talk about depression, it's like our body saying, hey, we're gonna make you be still, and there's a part in there going, but Josh doesn't want to be still. And he's like, well, if he doesn't want to, then just shut down the stuff that gives him energy. because if he's not going to cooperate,
Then
we'll
we'll do it
shut it
another
down,
way. Yeah.
and we can get into like polyvagal theory and stuff like that another time, but
Right.
that kind of touches in on that stuff. But yeah, the control panel is a really cool aspect of that metaphor.
Yeah.
So then the last part are firefighters.
But I like firefighters. I think first response. I think, alarm off. 'Cause that's how you see it.
Yeah.
Right. That's what's
Sure.
happening to your
Right.
neurobiology
Right.
often. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So the firefighters are the ones that are. I refer to the firefighters like everybody has a internal samurai that's going to jump in the way and protect you at all costs.
Yep.
They often will also perceive danger to be present in way, even danger that really is present. They might perceive it to be more dangerous than what it is, but sometimes they perceive threats to be dangerous when they're not.
That's right.
And that's the whole point of doing this work. So that's kind of IFS in a nutshell. Just to illustrate for people like what that might look like if you go into an IFS therapist office, like they're probably going to have you close your eyes, focus on some breathing,
Yep.
and they're going to start doing some guided imagery with you, or like kind of walking you inside your mind so you can start meeting these parts. And like I said, those are just 3 categories.
Right.
There are endless amounts.
Yeah. You can have obviously more than
parts.
3 parts.
Right. And I would venture to say that everybody has
Different aspects.
a lot
right?
more than 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they start having you meet your parts, and it's wild. Like it is like it's kind of like
Yeah.
what is happening, like,
Yeah.
and it kind of feels a little hocus pocusy a little bit,
Yeah,
but it's
but-
really happening in your mind,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. I don't. It may sound that way, but I think anybody who's ever sat with it, it actually feels.
Oh
It
yeah.
feels very like reasonable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I even tried to tell people too. It's like, look, if you cracked open the human skull, right, there are clearly 2 brains in there,
Yep.
right? You have clearly a left brain and a right brain, as we would call them, and then you have the corpus callosum, which attaches both of them so they can do what? They can talk to each other, right? And then Dan Siegel talks about the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. And if you get into like neuroscience and stuff, you got localization
Yep.
that's
Yep.
happening, where different functions are happen in different parts of the brain, so it's localized, right? And so people often don't stop to think that, like, most people can identify with the idea of like talking to themselves. Have you ever caught yourself just talking to yourself? And most people are like, yeah, of course. But what people often don't think about is that you're not always talking to the same part.
Right. Right.
And then they start feeling a little schizophrenic or DID a little bit, and that's actually, I think, one of Schwartz's original theories about dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called split personality disorder, is that all these parts that we have disassociate so much from each other that they kind of stop communicating with each other, and they develop basically their own separate identity.
Right.
Which is kind of fascinating. It actually makes a lot of sense to me.
It makes a lot of sense. But I think, I just realized, Josh, we left out the most important part of all.
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
The self.
Yeah.
The capital S, and
Yeah.
we call it self, right?
Right.
So
So talk about that, like the objective of
Yeah.
IFS. What
the objective of IFS, right?
Yeah.
The objective of IFS is to help people actually operate in self, right? So self is where Schwartz will sometimes kind of condense this, but self is the place where the C's live, meaning the letter C, where you're calm, where you're communicative, where you are cooperative, where you're compassionate. That's self, right? And when we're in self, we aren't dissociated from the moment or our bodies. The self is able to take in information and respond to it, versus one of those manager or firefighter parts that are overreacting or underreacting or taking you away from the moment to protect you, right? And so the object of IFS is to operate more in self, to explore your parts, right? And basically make peace with those managers, firefighters, to go to the exiles, the wounded parts, give them comfort or rest, or tenderness, compassion, so that they are less activated. They're less available to you because they're not needed. Because self, I always, use the language of go to your parts and make sure that the self lets them know I got this.
Right.
Right. And so that's the goal, is to be in self. And excuse me, as you get to know your parts, you get to know especially if you work on it,
Right.
when you're in
Sure.
each one of those. And the goal is to really operate from self.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
100%. And we're kind of getting into the next one, which is getting to know your parts. And when we're talking about the self, like one way that I have come to understand it too is like you want the self is kind of going in to convince the other parts like to let the self lead now, because if you really kind of think about it from like a survivor point of view, like, and we always talk about kids are great survivors, right? So they this part of the brain is very skilled, very good at what it does, and these parts are existing and they're operating on this because when we're little, when we're small, the self really hasn't really fully developed yet, right? So we are relying on those parts to kind of carry us along, to help us out, right? And sometimes, I would say more often than not, those parts don't realize that you grew up, and you haven't really let them know.
Well, I think that's when you look at IFS with trauma, and you'll find that a lot of times those parts are, stuck in the age of that traumatic event or experience, right? Not always, but a lot of times. Like one exile that's pretty common is someone's wounded child, right?
Yeah.
And so that part is still 8 years old.
Yeah.
Right? Even though you're 40.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mine's 7.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. And I think most people's are somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Sure. So I think that's a lot around a traumatic lens, right?
Yeah.
And the managers and the firefighters may also, even if it's not just trauma, more adverse, but yes, I think that's part of getting to know your parts is how, we ask a lot, how old is that part?
Yes.
Right? Where do they come from? The origin story of the parts is very important.
100%.
And it's a very beautiful experience because you talked about kind of what is the self supposed to do? The self doesn't go fire the manager and the firefighters and kick out the exiles. They sit down and actually very empathetically notice where they come from, what they've done, and really thank them for their service.
That's actually one of the first things you do.
One of the first things you do
is say thank you for looking out for me when no one else was.
That's right.
A lot of times, not saying it's that way for everybody.
Thanks for getting me through that.
Yeah,
I really needed you.
Yeah. And these are like the parts that you thought were the worst parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Like the part of you that is the part of you that draw you to, be sexually compulsive, or the part of you that is a perfectionist, like just these things that we really kind of beat ourselves up about. These parts probably likely are very, it would be insult, not insult to injury, but it just disrespectful and I guess insulting to them to treat them like they're a bad guy.
Right.
And it's like, it's the first thing that you really have to do is say thank you.
Well, even
for looking out for me.
Even before IFS, I think Jung talked about our inner critic.
Right.
And I think that probably everybody's got some version of an inner critic, which tells you there's something neurobiologically that happens to us, right? That makes us be, use criticism as a driver, or definitely you watch it, like watching your children grow up and seeing them kind of navigate social situations. Yeah. Right? And you can hear them go, well, I don't want to be that kid. Right. I don't want to be that one. You can hear the inner critic is starting, and they're like, oh, yeah.
Starts early, for sure.
And so I think that even before this is something that we've all known, right? Is that there's a voice inside of us, and a lot of times it's right. Yeah. Like sometimes if I tell my kids something, they don't listen, but if a peer says it, oh boy, the same message, they take it in. Because that message, which may sound hard, has an adaptive quality.
Right.
right? And so being in self means being able to say,
Right.
man, I don't want to I don't want to hate on myself. I don't want to be ugly to myself, but I do need to be,
Right.
relentlessly honest,
Yeah.
right? And self can do that.
Yeah. It is a really neat process, and I know from just like personal experience, I have learned to love myself in ways that I just never saw fathomable. Now, real quickly before we kind of leave this topic on getting to know your parts, the way like how you and I might do it. So I might blend IFS a little bit with when we're doing EMDR because I already have people in that space, in
Right.
that we know where they're breathing, their eyes are closed because I don't usually
Right.
I don't usually have them move their eyes. I usually use the tappers because it hurts my elbow too much to do this all day, you know. But and so sometimes I will kind of do a little blend if they're kind of going
Yeah.
there, but most of the time I'm just using parts language.
Yes. Sure.
Right, and I'm very big into storytelling. If people haven't noticed, we're talking about Inside Out today, and so like a part of you feels this. Can we talk about that part, or how does that part feel?
Yeah.
Or what is that part about, or can we explore that? Or sometimes you'll see it happen right there in session.
Yes. Very
Someone is
much.
like, they're in tears, and then all of a sudden they're
Something shifts in their
yeah, and
body.
I'm like, ooh,
Yeah. The
what just happened
presence.
there, right? Like how do you kind of use it?
Yeah, I think parts language. I think it's probably from the get go, right? Because again, especially when you're talking about addictions and compulsions, the people often start out with kind of just a binary: the good part of me, the bad part of me,
Right.
right? And so from there, that's already the language that we start to use, right? Of getting to know that and kind of exploring it. And then usually I try to take it using the IFS model that's not just, a split of good and bad, right? But a
Right.
little bit more. But yeah, you'll see it. I think the getting to know your parts bleeds in obviously to the next part, to the next sections we want to speak about. But getting to know your parts means getting to know how they feel in your body too.
Right. Oh yeah, it's good.
Because
Yeah.
my manager is a click of the head space. Like it's like the windshield wiper wipes and it's manager time, right? And you'll see firefighter also happen for people in the office, right? You'll see them getting angry and defensive, right? Their posture changes, the tone of voice changes, their eyes change, right? I mean, we're watching people all the time, so we notice, right?
Yeah.
And we also notice when people are in self, when they're emerging out of operating, in a different part. Like we start to
Right.
notice it, right?
Yeah.
And as clients
Yeah.
get to know their body, I'll be like, check in with that part of your body that kind
Yeah.
of tells you where you're at, right?
Yeah.
And so getting to know your parts helps us know kind of the next section about who's in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a whole cast of characters in there. And like so,
Right.
if when you think about like you're watching Inside Out, these are just five, and then they introduced four more in the next one, and who knows? I'm assuming there's going to be a third one. They're probably going to introduce some more parts, And now theirs are mainly focused on emotion,
Right, right.
and I think that's probably the best that they could do to really capture how parts work. But parts aren't just emotional
Emotion,
parts.
right.
We put this
The whole
other
cast.
yeah, so there's like this whole cast of characters, and it's kind of easy to start with like like the emotional stuff, like a part of me feels sad, or part of me feels happy, or part of me wants to, or part of me doesn't.
Right, right,
But
right.
there's even parts where it's like someone's like, hey, what do you want to eat for dinner? It's like a part of me wants Chinese food, and a part of me wants Mexican food. Like it's like this still there's even a battle of parts
Deciding.
with that, and so. So it's I think as you said, like kind of just start basic and just asking yourself like, what is this part of me, and don't try to get too complicated
Right,
with it.
right.
Just let's talk about the driver's seat
Yeah.
first before we dive into how to use
We kind
it,
of
right?
already
Because
talked
that's the
about
last
that.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But I guess this question really is uh, kind of an aspect of the very last
I
question,
think so
which
too. Yeah.
is proper uses. So, like one of the questions I think you you should ask, or something we ask people. Sometimes I just ask my friends after they've seen Inside Out, like, "Hey, like who steers the ship most of the time?" Right, for you, like which one is most likely to steer the ship?
Yeah.
So as we see, like in Inside Out, kind of the point is as when this child is born,
Right.
like there's just joy. There's just joy, and joy's in charge. And then sadness comes along. It's just joy and sadness, right? And joy doesn't really know why sadness is there.
Yeah.
But she tolerates sadness. It's like she's here, so I got to deal with her. And then comes fear, and then comes anger, and then comes disgust, right? And what's interesting to me about the movie is that not everybody. The other four, they all share one thing in common: is they don't quite know why sadness is there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what
that's the language or the kind of theme throughout the. Yeah.
Right. That's what the movie kind of becomes about is them understanding. Not it does kind of get into like Joy starting to learn to relinquish control, and that she doesn't have to be in the driver's seat all the time.
Right.
And the one in charge,
be.
right?
Yeah.
And that there's some in that. So she is doing that with the other parts as well, which is kind of funny when she kind of Joy gets lost for a while, and it's just fear, sadness, disgust, and anger that's kind of taken over. It's just
I love anger.
It's just a mess, right?
It's a mess.
And so then it kind of flashes out to Riley, who's the little girl that all this happened inside of, and you're seeing how this conflict of parts is manifesting inside of her, and it's perfect. It's like that's exactly what it would be like.
It is. It's they did it right.
Yeah. So I think so asking yourself like, and you can start with those 5 characters. You can throw in the surprise, maybe. You can throw in anxiety, embarrassment, boredom, and envy if you want. But which part tends to be in charge?
Right. Who's driving?
Yeah, who's driving the ship? And as you can see, like from also in the movie, like when it pans into mom and dad's minds.
Yes.
Like in mom's world, I mean, in her mind, all her parts are grown with her now, and sadness is steering her ship, or at least in that scene, sadness is in charge, and in dad's mind, anger is in charge, right? But so that might sound like, oh well, mom, sadness is in charge, so she must be depressed, or dad's in charge, so he must just be angry. No, it's like these are how I think they represent the healthy, well adapted, not maladaptive parts.
Sure.
Of what it would look like.
Well, I think the idea is that if you have the self-awareness, right, that those are within and they are all included in your operating system.
Right.
Then it isn't a battle to eliminate. It's like, okay, here's sadness. So, oh boy, anger really walked over the control panel and just started smacking all the buttons.
Yeah.
Right? But I think it is healthy or adaptive.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what we want. Like, what I don't think the movie does too well, because I don't think they're operating from IFS point of view.
Well, they're not.
Right, is just the reflection of the true self, right?
Which is supposed to be Riley, I guess.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Her awareness of those different parts driving her.
Right.
And her using to consult with them versus which.
They might do that in the third one.
They may, because as she gets older, right? She gets
because
more...
the true self doesn't really wouldn't show up right now anyways in her
She's
life.
Still developing. Maybe we just busted the plot line.
I know.
But the idea of it is right. I think it's not it's not IFS made into a Pixar movie. But the reason this felt very like it went together for us was because the idea that we're all internally complex systems, right?
Yeah.
And we all have patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, and even emotional patterns. And asking where do they come from, how do they manifest, and what's driving me? I mean, that is such an important question. And it's not a 15-minute. This is a lifelong. Right? Because even when you resolve, right, your exile feels safe, right? And your manager and firefighters, can kind of put down their whatever tools they use to protect you. You're going to have to be aware of this system. It's still in you. Right. And how do you manage that?
Yeah.
How do you stay aware of that? And know that stressors, trauma is going to, definitely bring on. Right.
So we say not so great. You're talking about just maladaptive, right?
Maladaptive, right? No longer working in balance, right?
Right. Yes, agreed. And the parts can be in conflict.
They
You
can.
know.
And the point, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to kind of illustrate parts too, like when clients will bring up like the angel and the devil on their shoulder,
Yes,
and I
yes,
was like,
yes.
I kind of love it when they do that because we often kind of think of it, well, I need to listen to the angel, not the devil, like that's the
Clear,
solution.
right.
But sometimes I'm like, sometimes you just need to tell them both to shut the heck up,
Yeah.
so that the grown up can think,
Well, yeah, because if you
or
think
the
about
self, the
where have
true
we
self.
seen those mostly?
Right.
It's in cartoons when we were kids.
Yeah.
We get to expand on them, right?
Yeah.
Because the idealized good is not also attainable,
Sure.
right? We're
And the devil isn't the the bad part of you.
right. It may be the one
It's
trying to
a
protect
maybe
you.
a darker
Yeah,
part,
maybe.
a more devious part, a part that
Right.
the part that where you might get in trouble more or
Well,
whatever,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
not necessarily, it's a part. It can't be perceived like from a religious point of view. You can't perceive it as Satan himself existing inside of you, and that's what's happening.
Right.
Like it's got you if to hate any part of you is to hate yourself.
Well, I think that that's
And so
and that's also, let's just make this disclaimer real quick, Josh. We're also not talking about people, right? And we're not trying to say that this is something that you can use to go from being a antisocial, violent human
sure. Oh,
being, and we have
yes.
compassion for that part.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about
Right.
here, right? We're talking about this from more of a global
Right.
perspective of the way that people's internal systems can work, right?
Right, exactly, and I wouldn't go as far to say that there isn't evil in this world.
Right.
Personally, from my personal point of view, like I will say that I think that it's a lot. Like I don't think I see evil in my office. I just don't think evil shows up in the therapy room. I just don't.
Not very often.
Sometimes it might, but most of the people I'm working with, and they're diving into this part of them that feels bad. Turns out it's just another part that was trying to protect them.
Yeah, a lot of the times.
You know?
Yeah, but I just want to make sure that we've made that clear that
Yes.
we're also aware
Yes.
of that and
Yeah.
that happens.
And when a part manifests itself in a way like where you're hurting other people, that is an extremely maladaptive
Yes.
part. When you get down to like the brass tacks of that part and you start chipping away at it, this part has just taken extreme measures to protect how they perceive they need to protect
Yeah.
this person or this exile. And so even people that, like, for example, in domestic violence that have been the victimizer in a domestic violence situation, if they have the wherewithal to go get help and the therapist help them kind of tackle this part of them, and they start peeling away the layers, is they're just going to find another part that's trying to protect them and went to some of the worst ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And so that does not mean that that person's off the hook for the behaviors and the hurt that they've caused.
Right.
And I think a good therapist will hold them to task for
Well,
that.
that's, I think, one of the main
Right.
reasons. I also think that, to just be fair globally, like, unfortunately, we don't get to do a lot of that work.
Sure.
Right? There's some
Yeah.
of that work that's done in some prison mental health systems,
Right,
but
yeah.
the research and the data, I would say, is not exactly
Yeah.
accessible and perfectly executed. So it is hard a little bit, right? We're talking
Yeah.
a little bit about theory here too.
Sure. Absolutely. Just real quickly, let's just dive into the practical applications.
Yeah.
How to make it work for you. You know, going and seeing an IFS therapist, that's like the gold standard.
Sure.
That'd be really cool. Or seeing a therapist that uses parts language to help you kind of navigate through it. But I would say, like, outside of those two contexts, I think kind of going back to what we said earlier of just really paying attention to this idea that there's start using the parts language of, like, a part of me feels this, a part of me feels that. But when you do it, really spend some time thinking about which part is it, and start seeing if you can. I'd start identifying your cast of characters.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I have clients that will start talking about this, and if you're one of these wonderful, beautiful people that journals regularly, you'll start reading back, and you're like, oh, I can see. I can see that I was in this space then, right? This part was here, this part was activated, etc.
Yes.
These
Yeah.
parts were battling. You can even see it in, some of your, if you're a, one of those beautiful people that
Yeah.
regularly journals, right? So it's about building that
Right.
awareness, but we're building the awareness in a mindset of all of this is like this is an exploratory experience, and all is welcome, all
Right.
musings, all observations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like, ooh, that part's bad, but dang, that was effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I think anybody that's been in a couple relationship can relate to a time where you kind of lost your mind in an argument, or, you just blew up, shut down, and you engaged in a way where it was unhelpful and maybe even hurtful. And eventually that ends, and you part ways for a little bit, and then in that time you're like kind of mortified by your own behavior,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're like, ugh. And what you're doing, I mean, or what you need to be doing in that moment, and some people just kind of naturally are doing this, is thinking about like, what happened to me in that, kind of. And so then you go back to your partner and say, hey, I'm really sorry for how I acted, right? And that's great. I think that's if that's part of your dynamic, like, yes, you're probably not coming to see us very much, because that's really, I would say that it would be a healthy dynamic for a
Sure.
couple that gets in those arguments. But if you can take the extra step and say, hey, I'm sorry for how I acted, and then go into your parts language. I think when you said this, it triggered a part of me that this,
Yeah.
or a part of me from my childhood, and
Right.
I felt 7 again, or I felt like a teenager again. I felt like I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to my dad,
Yeah.
and it's just like a kind of a strange space I went into,
Yeah.
and so that's why I think I responded the way I did, and I just want you to know I'm sorry.
That would
And
be an A plus plus.
right, that's a
Yeah.
that's a gold
That's
standard
often
there.
what we do in couples therapy,
Yeah.
but yeah, these are things that practical uses, right?
Right.
The awareness, but then the ability to talk about
Right.
it too, right?
Yeah. Another thing I would suggest people do, like for practical use too, is if you have any experience in meditating, or some
Yes.
people who don't meditate but they pray, which I think is also a form of meditation, is like while you're in that space with you in a quiet place where you're regulating your breathing and you're kind of inside your mind,
Yes.
is just to explore in there. And when you realize there are certain parts of you that are really helpful in certain situations, or you understand like the visceral response that you might have, like to like anxiety, for example. I know where I'm going to feel that in my body, and when I feel it, I know what I can do using parts language, or kind of a parts perspective, where I can close my eyes and go inside my mind and ease that, and I can feel
Feel
that
it.
leave
Yeah.
my body.
Yeah.
It's so wild to
Yeah.
me. Like,
Mindfulness is amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. But
So
meditation is a great space to do this
sure,
because it's
100%.
safe. It really creates a openness and warmth of like,
Yeah.
let's just explore,
And
right?
and to be clear too, like meditation isn't for people who haven't really expanded their repertoire of it. Like, it's not, sitting cross-legged with your hands out and spending like 30 minutes in kind of a space like that where you're just checked out,
Right. Right.
like Deepak Chopra or something. It's like you can do it in the shower. Like, you can let that water hit your face and breathe, and in just in a brief moment in time, just kind of.
Well, that's a mindfulness-ish
Sure.
practice, right? It's a little,
Yeah,
but
so I'm using the word meditate
yeah,
loosely.
right.
Yeah.
But no, I think that either whether it's
Yes.
in those mindfulness that are
Right.
kind of meditative about
Right.
reflecting upon reflecting, but even those designated sections of this is my meditation reflection time, that also, right?
Sure.
It's also
Yes. But just to start somewhere is kind of what I was encouraging.
Yeah, or
people
watch
to
the
do.
movie. Even
Right.
if you wish want practical uses of this, just watch these two
Well,
movies.
that's a great
And
suggestion,
because
actually.
people like we left the theater and my kids immediately started talking
Yeah.
about oh, this part and this part, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's great. It normalizes it too, right? Which is, gosh, that's half the battle
Right.
sometimes, right?
Yeah. So I think that's a fantastic suggestion. Like that should have been our first suggestion. Just go watch the movie. You know,
Movies.
movies now,
Yeah.
right? And just, you know, like watch it for entertainment, but watch it and think,
Yeah.
and let yourself think about yourself and your own life and how this, on why it's so amusing to you, you know, and that's a way you can do it too. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, we made it through.
We did.
We did.
Yeah.
I made it through with the iPad.
You did good, Josh.
You know, switching the cameras around.
On, and that's
I felt
really
like
nice.
I thought it's the best I've ever done with it. We used to do it this way,
I
remember,
know.
years
Oh, yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
And then we roped somebody into
I know.
doing this part for us. So, but always appreciate you, Carrie, taking the time to do this.
Appreciate you, Josh.
And I appreciate everybody that has supported our channel, supported the podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And when you make your way over to the audio platform, go ahead and give us that 5-star review, so that we can please the algorithms and maybe we can get this material out to more people.
Yeah.
Of course, if you want the gold standard of viewer, then you will share it with people. You'll say, you need to watch this. You need to listen to these people. That sounds really narcissistic.
That sounds very narcissistic.
Yeah, you didn't have to say that. I was the one that said it, and then you're like validating it.
I
That
did
does sound
validate it. I did. I emphasized and validated.
Josh, don't be narcissistic. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks again for everybody for being here.